From claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt.
EWTN Radio presents The Miracle Hunter with Michael O'Neill.
Welcome to the Miracle Hunter Radio Show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. We love talking about science and miracles on this show, and we've got the absolute perfect person to interview on our program today, and that's Father Robert Spitzer. You've seen him many times, I'm sure, on EWTN. He's got a brand new book out. It's called Christ, Science, and Reason, What We Can Know About Jesus, Mary, and Miracles. We'll be excited to talk to him later in the show. And for those people who don't know, there's a new series coming out that I'm producing on Eucharistic miracles called Miracles of the Eucharist. And Father Robert Spitzer is one of the main voices in that program. He did a great interview with us, and his reflections on the 5 most scientifically studied miracles, Eucharistic miracles in history, make it into this program. So we'll be excited to reconnect with Father Spitzer later in the program. And it's never too early to start to think about Christmas, of course, whether it's buying those Christmas gifts or just getting your heart in the Christmas spirit. We'll be speaking today with Anthony DeStefano about his new book, Christmas in Heaven, kind of his fun way, a children's book that looks at how Christmas might be celebrated in heaven. So we'll be excited to talk to him later in the program. And check out my series, They Might Be Saints. We do this every week, which on Wednesdays at 8 a.m. Central Time. We've got an episode that looks at Americans on the path to sainthood. And for this week, we've got Venerable Mother Maria Kaupas. And her cause for sainthood is through the Sisters of St. Casimir, and her inspirational work in education and healthcare led many to seek her intercession before God on their behalf. So check that one out this Wednesday coming up at 9 a.m. Eastern or 8 a.m. Central Time. And my other program, Explore with the Miracle Hunter, we've got a brand new episode that has not been seen yet. It is a Walsingham, and I explored the miraculous apparition of Our Lady of Walsingham, who revealed plans for the Holy House in Nazareth to an English noblewoman. So check that one out for those people who've been waiting for a new episode. Here you go. Explore with the Miracle Hunter, Walsingham, this Saturday, October 19th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Later in the show, we're going to be looking at the Might Be Saint of the Day, and for the very last time, Blessed Carlo Acutis. Of course, everybody knows that he has a miracle that's going to lead him to be canonized. We don't know the date yet, but he still is a blessed and therefore a Might Be Saint. So he lived from 1991 to 2005 in Italy. And the 365 Days with Mary Project, October 12, is Our Lady of Aparecida in Brazil from 1717. I was just there this past year. What an amazing, amazing Marian shrine. Perhaps the largest in the world, actually. It's so expansive and impressive. We'll be featuring that on Explore with the Miracle Hunter coming soon. But what an incredible place. We'll be telling you a little bit about Our Lady of Aparecida later in the show. And the question of the week, it was a good one. This is the one I got giving a talk recently, where the question is, with DNA evidence being incomplete in all the Eucharistic miracle samples, there is some conjecture that perhaps it's because Jesus had a human mother and a divine father. And the question from the audience was a good one. What about the DNA of the mother, mitochondrial DNA? We'll see if we can answer that one later in the show. And the Might Be Saint of the Day is a Eucharistic miracle from Sokolka in Poland that happened on today's date in 2008. Let's take a look at the miracle news. We do this every week where we talk about the miracles happening around the world and those things that relate to miracles. And perhaps this isn't one of these major miracles like a Marian apparition or a Eucharistic miracle or an incorrupt saint, but it's somewhat of a miracle of architecture in some ways. There is a new statue of Jesus that is now the tallest in the world. And so at 200 feet above Toba Lake in Indonesia, Jesus Christ the Savior, a statue, creates a new record. Recently, a new religious statue has been inaugurated in the North Sumatra province in Indonesia, and it's a sight to behold. The 200-foot statue called Jesus the Savior has its arms outstretched at the tourist site of Sebiabia Hill overlooking Toba Lake in Samosir Regency. And while its posture is similar to Cristo Redentor in Rio de Janeiro, this latest statue is 65 feet taller. And so the inauguration ceremony was held by the Bishops' Conference there in Indonesia, and President Antonius Subianto Bunjamin of Bandung, and the prelate shared how the Pope blessed a miniature of the statue at the Vatican Embassy in Jakarta while he leaves there on his papal visit on September 6th. And the Pope also signed a prayer, and that was inscribed into a metal plate that stands at the bottom of the statue. And the location of the statues is interesting. Bishop Bunjamin explained that this is a hill blessed by God, which is expected to be a place that can strengthen the faith of the people, end quote. And the Capuchin Archbishop of Medan Sabayong was also present during the ceremony, and he shared that the statue, quote, is a reminder that God has been present in the world. And the statue is not only an object of beauty, but a call for humans to be a light for the world, end quote. And he also referenced the statue's open arms, saying how this shows Jesus accepts everyone with love. And the new statue will be a welcome addition to the province's many Catholics, which around a third of North Sumatra's 15 million population is Christian. And there are at least 1.1 million Catholics, according to the report. And this is through Alatea that we got this report of a new statue of Jesus being the tallest in the world. And I posted this one to the Facebook page of the Miracle Hunter for those people who want to get a look at it. Let's take a look at Catholic Pub Trivia. We do this every week. We ask a trivia question and give out a prize to an emailer that writes in with the fastest with the correct answer. Last week's question was, which U.S. city has its rosary as part of its official seal? And that answer was Los Angeles, the city of angels. The question for this week, which saint from Germany was a doctor of the church, a musician, and a scientist? We'll be talking with Father Robert Spitzer about science and the miraculous, and we've got a question today about saints who are scientists. So, which saint from Germany was a doctor of the church, a musician, and a scientist? If you think you know that answer and want to win the prize, the image of the faces of Mary, send me an email to questions@miraclehunter.com, and maybe you'll be the winner of that prize, the image of the faces of Mary. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking with Father Robert Spitzer, author of the new book, Christ, Science, and Reason. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. Well, those people who have tuned into this program know that coming soon from EWTN will be a mini-series called Miracles of the Eucharist, where we look at the 5 most scientifically studied Eucharistic miracles in history. And we interview experts from all around the world, including Father Robert Spitzer. You know him, of course, from EWTN, from the Magis Center and beyond. And he's out with a brand new book called Christ, Science, and Reason, What We Can Know About Jesus, Mary, and Miracles. We welcome back to the program today, Father Robert Spitzer.
It's great to be with you again, Michael.
Yeah, it's great to talk again, and I'm so excited about this book, Christ, Science, and Reason. And you cover some of the topics that I'm really excited about. Maybe anything related to miracles I'm excited about. But I love in this book how you look at the Shroud of Turin and what we can learn from it about the passion and resurrection of Jesus and Eucharistic miracles. As I mentioned, we interviewed you for that forthcoming mini-series, so you get into some of the most scientifically studied cases there. And of course, people who go to my website, miraclehunter.com, know that I am very interested in Marian apparitions. I have as many as 2,500 documented on my website, but you get into some of these big-name ones with Fatima, Lourdes, and Guadalupe, the big 3. You get into some of the great miracles associated with them. So this new book, Christ, Science, and Reason, is an exciting one for me personally. And what inspired you to write this book? I know that miracles are on your mind as well as they are for me. What inspired you to put this sort of in this book that can draw people and make the connection between science and reason?
Well, there were really 3 motives. I mean, the first one was so many new scientific investigations and discoveries have been made regarding the shroud, these Eucharistic miracles you just mentioned, and especially the Tilma of Guadalupe. And I just wanted to put under one cover all of the new data, well, some of the old data too. I wanted to explain the actual relic of the shroud, for example, and to go through the basics on three of the Eucharistic miracles, Buenos Aires, Tixla, and Sokolka, and then to go through the new discoveries regarding the Tilma, etc. So I just decided under one cover it shall go. I'll try and footnote it, very, very assiduously, try to make it as good of a scientific report as I can get using data, from other people. I wasn't the scientific investigator. I'm just the reporter. And so I tried to summarize those things under a single cover, and that's why I wrote it, because I thought, today when you have so much new evidence, convincing evidence, especially for the Shroud of Turin and Eucharistic miracles, why in the world, wouldn't we just get that out there, document it significantly, put it into an accessible form, and put it under one cover? So that was my primary motive.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I have to admit that the Shroud of Turin has been a topic of conversation with me. I try to evangelize as much as I can through miracles, whether it's an Uber ride to the airport before an international trip or whatever it is. I'm always kind of chatting with various people about miracles, and I'm always shocked about the Shroud of Turin, how few people know about it. Even Christians have never heard of this, and perhaps it's a result of that 1988 testing that gave results that nobody was expecting, and then it led to the discussion of it being a medieval forgery. And maybe it went silent for a while as far as the discussion went worldwide about the Shroud of Turin. But recent studies have actually been done that give some more promising results. So if you would, please recap sort of the situation that we've been in with the doubt about the Shroud of Turin, and then some of the new research that is leading us to open up our eyes again.
Right. So when the 1988 carbon dating came out, essentially they dated it to between 1250 to around 1350, right in that neighborhood. I don't have the exact dates, but right in that neighborhood, clearly indicating that the shroud was about 700 years old, meaning that it could never have been the burial cloth of Jesus. So for about 10 years, all the way until 1998, basically people just ignored it. It just dropped off the scientific radar. I mean, obviously the scientists who had examined it in the 1978 Shroud of Turin Research Project investigation, they did not think that the shroud was a fraud at all. They kept sort of going at it, but the interest among the general scientific and general popular community just faded, because everybody thought, well, there it is, a medieval forgery, 700 years old. Then a series of different things came about. Dr. Ray Rogers discovered that there were some samples of cotton fibers in the area where the sample was taken from. But then Dr. Tristan Casabianca, after multiple attempts to get the raw data from the carbon dating release from the British Museum, who had held onto them for 29 years, and multiple attempts, finally had a veritable lawsuit based on Freedom of Information Act, saying, hey, you can't just keep this. You have to release this data. So finally, the British Museum reluctantly did so, and then a series of discoveries were made. First, Tristan Casabianca showed significant heterogeneity in the sampling. That's a very bad thing. When you get heterogeneity, that means that there might be a mixture of other fibers from different ages might be there. It could mean a significant error in the carbon dating. For example, several of the physicists who were present said there could have been neutron emissions from the body, and I do believe that this is absolutely the truth, and I'll talk about it in a moment. But definitely there could have been neutron emissions that, obviously a linen cloth is filled with cellulose. Cellulose is composed of nitrogen, and one of the nitrogen isotopes is N14. And there's a significant amount of N14 in that linen cloth. So what happens when a neutron hits N14 is it turns it into C14. So it's just a really normal thing. N14 plus neutron yields a C14 plus proton. Now, once you've got an additional a bunch of C14. By the way, that's the isotope measured in the carbon dating.
Right.
So once you've got this significant elevation of C14 in the cloth, you can expect errant dating. And I'll just rush to the fore here, but if you have a chance to look at Robert Rucker's article, that's Rucker, he has an article, he has several articles, actually, free on the internet, very excellent articles in carbon dating. He shows, first of all, that there was significant expansion of the margins of error in the test, which did not reveal that there were 3 standard deviations of, a deviation from the mean, which would indicate a significant problem with the carbon dating. That was basically hidden by the people who wrote up the report. Damon, who actually reported the actual data, that indicates, the problem is there. But when you compare that to the write-up, you can see that they hid a significant revelation of a real problem in the carbon date. So that was kept hidden, and for whatever reason, Nature, who published it, didn't reveal it. Rucker explains that in some detail. But let me just rush to the chase. What has happened since that time, you have 5 additional dating tests. The really important ones, this new one by Liberato Di Caro and his colleagues over at the Italian National Labs, as a wide-angle X-ray scattering test. That one just it showed up the other day, actually in Newsweek, maybe 2 months ago. But actually, the data is about a year and a half old. He peer-reviewed that wide-angle X-ray scattering test, showed its efficacy for dating ancient linens very accurately without recourse to carbon. That'll become important. But the main thing to see is that he dates the shroud to between 55 to 74 AD, and that's with a 95% confidence level. And this is an excellent peer-reviewed test. So, again, as I said, this has made kind of the popular news. So that, combined with Giulio Fanti's 3 other tests, the Fourier-transformed infrared spectroscopy, the Raman laser spectroscopy, and the mechanical compressibility and tension test, when you put it all together, the shroud, by these 4 other tests, apparently originated in the mid-1st century AD, not anywhere around 1250 to 1350 AD. So there's a big discrepancy between these tests and, of course, the carbon dating. Now, we know there was a significant error in the carbon dating because that's completely revealed, and you can read all of it in Rucker's article. The main thing to get to, though, is what did Rucker do to try and show, by the way, there's what's called the particle radiation hypothesis. Particle radiation hypothesis is an explanation of the image on the shroud, which is the most unique image by far in the history of humankind. Right. There has been nothing like it. First of all, it's got 3-dimensional imaging on it, which you can validate through a VP8 image analyzer at NASA or someplace else. The main thing, though, is it is definitely 3D imaging. There's imaging from inside the body, like the backbone, in perfect 3-dimensional proportionality to the flesh surrounding it and to the distance from the cloth. So, hello. I mean, what image has got 3-dimensional imaging on it besides an MRI that we know of today? I mean, it's totally unusual. It's a perfect 3-dimensional image, and it's literally emblazoned on a non-photographically sensitive linen cloth. How did they do that? Well, the image is literally, attached to the uppermost surface of the fibrils of the cloth. It never penetrates. The image never penetrates to the middle of the threads or to the middle of the cloth. Now, the only way that can happen, you couldn't never do that with a liquid, right? Liquid would go right into the threads and into the middle of the cloth. A vapor would go into the threads and into the middle of the cloth. A vapor would be blurry anyway. And, of course, if you try to use rubs or powders, that wouldn't, be able to explain it either, because there's no real residues of rubs and powders on the cloth to begin with. But also, of course, a rub would penetrate into the middle of the fibers, and the powders that were used, as we shall see, are excluded by 2 other data that I'll briefly just talk about. But the main thing is you're looking at, an image that we couldn't nobody can possibly replicate even with today's technologies.
Yeah,
So,
to me, that might be the
main
most
thing of
convincing
importance
aspect
there's
of it.
a
Is that
huge number of places on the cloth where the cloth never touched the body, never made contact. So powder is out of the question because, of course, powder would have to make contact on the body, would have to make contact on the cloth. But around the eye sockets, underneath the elevated hands, obviously around the nose and in the depressed regions around the nose, etc. These places never made contact with the cloth, and many other places. So you start looking at it and go, well, how come there can be perfect three-dimensional imaging there where it never made contact with the cloth? There's only one explanation: radiation. The definition of radiation physics is action at a distance. So you can see right there, radiation has to do it. But what kind of radiation? John Jackson and his colleagues, wrote up a series of papers that were very good on the possibility of culminated vacuum ultraviolet radiation. That was a great possibility. At one time, it explained 22 out of the 45 enigmas on the shroud, and it definitely was tested by Paolo di Lazzaro to give the straw-like, coloration and the same kind of imaging as we see on the shroud. But the particle radiation hypothesis, this is the one that explains all 45 enigmas on the cloth. And the reason I'm getting into this is because it has everything to do with the carbon dating question you just asked. So particle radiation hypothesis basically says this: sometime between 24 to 50 hours after Christ has been put in the tomb, before you're going to get decomposition fluids and so forth emerging from the body, what happens is the body in the shroud undergoes complete nuclear disintegration. In other words, it becomes essentially a low temperature nuclear reaction. It won't destroy the shroud, but it's certainly radioactive, and it will give rise to a very bright flash of light and a non-destructive boom. But after that, and this is the important point, you get two discharges of particles, big showers of particles just flowing upward and downward, from the frontal image and the dorsal image. But the discharges of particle are of two types. There are the positively charged particles like protons and deuterons, and then there's neutrons and other non-positively charged heavy particles. So, for example, in the proton-deuteron discharge, what did that do? So the whole body is literally breaking apart into its particle constituents, and it's embedding itself where? In the uppermost surface of the fibrils of the cloth. It interacts with the particles, the electrons in the cloth. It stops right at the surface, makes the surface friable, that is to say, crispy or bitter, with a straw-like coloration, exactly like we see on the shroud, with the same very superficial penetration that we see on the shroud. It's not produced by any material at all. It's literally produced by this crispiness, this bitterness, brittleness of the cloth. What happens with the neutrons is the neutrons, they just blast through the cloth, but they irradiate the blood. That's what makes the blood so bright red. As you and I know, blood turns from bright red to brown to black, but not in the case of the shroud. You put the shroud out on exhibition in ultraviolet radiation, and boy, it turns bright red. And you go, how can 372 blood stains be so bright red? Well, neutrons is the answer, and you can see that when you irradiate blood with neutrons and then later expose it to ultraviolet light like the sun in an exposition, it's pretty clear, right? It turns bright red every time. So that could be a definite explanation. But the neutrons explain, the fluorescing. There's a strange pattern of fluorescing on the cloth, but neutrons explain that pattern of fluorescing. The strength of the cloth is explained by the neutron. Now, let me get back to the carbon dating for just a second, because, by the way, I might just say the odds of a body undergoing complete nuclear disintegration, or 7 billion stable atomic nuclei in a human body, literally together, simultaneously, undergo disintegration, causing a low temperature nuclear reaction with a flash and a boom and these particle discharges I just talked about. The odds of that happening are like a monkey typing the first scene of Macbeth by random tapping of the keys perfectly in a single try. Okay, it's a miracle. That's all I can tell you. But it's a miracle with a purpose. It's a miracle that gives rise to this perfect three-dimensional photographic negative image on the inside of the cloud.
That is absolutely incredible. Those numbers are amazing that they can get those to, like you say, exactly match. And Father Robert Spitzer, we're so grateful to you for breaking this down in great detail. And I have to invite you back to the next time, to talk about some of these Eucharistic miracles as you cover in your book, Christ, Science, and Reason, What We Know About Jesus, Mary, and Miracles. Thank you so much for part one of this interview, Father Robert Spitzer, for talking to us today about the amazing details of the Shroud of Turin. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be looking at the question of the week. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. I love getting your questions. People write in from around the world with questions about miracles happening in today's world and those that have happened centuries ago. And I also love giving talks. I've been giving a lot of talks recently where I speak for about 45 minutes. These days, a lot about Eucharistic miracles, since it's that time of Eucharistic revival here in the United States. And I leave some time for questions at the end. And I love hearing what people are thinking about. And I love giving it my best shot. And it's always interesting to hear what people are thinking about in the world of miracles. And so for people who want to invite me to speak at their parish or conference or event, they can go through my website, miraclehunter.com, and click on the Contact tab, and you can send me a message that way, and maybe I'll be speaking in your area coming soon. So the question from my last talk, which I thought was a really, really good one, I spoke about Eucharistic miracles, and I pointed out that throughout the world, these Eucharistic miracle samples have some sort of correspondence. We might say that they are all heart tissue, and they all have blood group AB correspondence. So all the samples in the world, you might say, in India, Italy, Argentina, Mexico, Poland, all these places are from blood group AB, which is amazing. And it's a rare blood type, except amongst Middle Eastern men. I think that's quite interesting, and it's the blood type found on the Shroud of Turin. So that's an interesting point of connection between all those. And I always like to say, wouldn't it be amazing if they did DNA studies and those samples from all around the world matched? Of course, everyone on the planet has unique DNA, all 8 billion of us. So what if those samples all matched? Wouldn't the world have to convert at that point? And they have done DNA tests, and the answer is, do they match? Well, it's all inconclusive, meaning they can't get a full DNA sample from any of these tests. And perhaps some people have said that perhaps this is because Jesus had a human mother and a divine father. So, of course, there wouldn't be a complete set of DNA. So that's a theory that's been proposed. And some people say, well, what about the maternal DNA then? Could that not be sampled from these Eucharistic miracle samples? Well, there has been some cases where they've been able to identify mitochondrial DNA, which would be the maternal DNA. And in that case, perhaps they could do a test of comparing those samples. So I know that there have been scientists and people in the church who have talked about this, but there has been no movement, as far as I know, as far as the Vatican or otherwise, to authorize this testing. But such a great question coming from the audience in my last talk. And if you have a question for the Miracle Hunter, you can send me an email to questions@miraclehunter.com, and maybe I'll be answering your question on the air next week. Let's take a look at the 365 Days with Mary project. We do this every week, where we look at the Marian devotion of the day as it lines up exactly to the day's date. You all know Fatima, May 13th, or Lourdes, February 11th, or Guadalupe, December 12th. But, believe it or not, there's a different Marian devotion that lines up each day to the calendar year. And we're talking about feast days and the miracles on those dates, and building of basilicas, the consecration of basilicas, different ways that Mary is celebrated
by the faithful in countries around the world. And so for today's date, this is one of the big Marian devotions, in my opinion. It is Our Lady of Aparecida from Brazil in 1717, and the word Aparecida means Our Lady who appeared. And the story goes that in October 1717, three fishermen, Domingos Garcia, Joko Alves, and Felipe Pedroso, were unsuccessfully fishing for a great feast and began to pray to Our Lady for help. And on their last cast, they found a statue of Our Lady of the Immaculate Conception. Next, their net became full with fish. And this was the first miracle of Our Lady of Aparecida, patroness of Brazil, crowned in 1930 by Pope Pius XII. And her feast celebrated on October 12th is a national holiday. John Paul II visited the Virgin Aparecida in her much-frequented sanctuary and gave it the title of Basilica. And the statue was violently broken a few days before the visit, but artists put it together, and the Virgin Aparecida returned to her niche in the basilica. And it's truly one of the most amazing churches in the world. It's an incredible basilica, one of the biggest you'll ever see, probably the biggest Marian shrine in the world. We're doing an episode of Explore with the Miracle Hunter. We were just filming there this past year. So coming soon to EWTN television, we'll be seeing Explore Aparecida. Let's take a look at the miracle of the day. We do this every week, where we look at a miracle happening in Christian history that lines up exactly to the day's date. Well, today's date is October 12th, and here's a miracle that took place on Sunday, October 12th, 2008, 2 weeks after the beatification of servant of God, Father Michael Shaposhko. And during the Holy Mass celebrated at the Parish Church of St. Anthony in Sokolka at 8:30 a.m., a consecrated host fell from the hands of one of the priests during the distribution of communion next to the altar. And the priest interrupted the distribution and picked up the host, in accordance with liturgical norms, placed it in a small container of water, in this case found in the church beside the tabernacle, where the priest may wash his fingers after distributing communion. The host was expected to dissolve in the water, which would later be disposed of properly. And a sister there from the parish, the sacristan there at the end of Mass, at the request of the pastor, Father Stanislav, he poured the water and host into another container, knowing that the consecrated host would take some time to dissolve. She placed the new container in the safe located in the parish sacristy. Only she and the pastor had the keys to the safe. And a week later, on October 19th, when the pastor asked about the condition of the host, Sister Julia went to the safe and she opened the door, and she noticed a delicate aroma of unleavened bread. And when she opened the container, she saw in the middle of the host, which was still largely intact, a curved, bright red stain, like a blood stain, a living particle of a body. And the water was untainted by the color. And she immediately informed the priest, who brought in another priest of the parish, and they were all amazed and speechless by what they saw. And they kept silent about this, and from a human point of view, it was difficult at that point to define if the altered form of the remainder of the host was the result of organic growth, a chemical reaction, or some other cause. And they immediately they contacted the local Archbishop of Białystok, and they went to Sokolka with the Chancellor of the Curia and other diocesan officials, and they were all deeply moved by what they saw. And the Archbishop ordered that the host be protected while they wanted to see what would happen. And the host was transferred from the rectory, placed in a tabernacle, and on the next day, by decision of the archbishop, the stained host was taken out of the water and placed in a small corporal, which was put back in the tabernacle, and the host was kept this way for 3 years, until it was solemnly brought back to the church in 2011. And during the first year, it was kept secret, and during that time, church authorities reflected on what to do, since they were dealing with a sign from God which needed to be interpreted. And in 2009, the host had dried out naturally. In the same month, the archbishop requested studies to be done on the host. He created an ecclesial commission to study the phenomenon. And a piece of the altered host was taken into independent labs and studied by 2 experts in order to ensure the credibility of the results. Both are from the University of Białystok, and the studies were carried out in the Department of Pathomorphology, and they did find that this host, the results were in perfect agreement. They concluded that the structure of the transformed fragment of the host is identical to myocardial heart tissue of a living person who's nearing death, and the structure of the heart muscle fibers is so deeply intertwined with that of the bread, it's in a way impossible to achieve with human means, according to the declaration of some of the professors. So truly amazing about this Eucharistic miracle, one of the great Eucharistic miracles in history. We'll be featuring this one on an episode of Miracles of the Eucharist coming out on EWTN television. And the we talk about they might be saints on this program. We talk about some of the sainthood news happening. We're talking about people on the path to sainthood, servants of God, venerables, blesseds, those people who don't have all their miracles yet validated by Rome. But we have some interesting sainthood news coming out. This past week, Pope Francis was in Belgium. He had quite a busy trip there and some controversy with some oppositions to his comments on abortion, for example. The Prime Minister there in Belgium reacted in a very bad way to that. But during his visit, one of the things that came from that was that Pope Francis announced that he was very interested in pursuing the canonization cause of King Baudouin. And so this was sort of a surprise announcement he made last Sunday to thousands of attendees of the papal mass at King Baudouin Stadium in Brussels. And he in a quote, it says, "On my return to Rome, I will open the process for the beatification of King Baudouin," the Pope said as the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. And he went on to call Baudouin a man of faith who serves as an example for leaders today. And he also asked that the Belgian bishops commit themselves to advancing Baudouin's cause. And so who is this Belgian king? If the Pope had his way, may become the next Catholic king to be declared a saint. He was a monarch who gave up his earthly crown rather than make himself complicit in the killing of the unborn. And so he had a great devotion to the Rosary. He was born in 1930. He had a 40-year reign from 1951 to 1993, and this was at a time of intense social, political, and religious upheaval in Belgium. And so and he married another devout Catholic princess, Fabiola de Mora y Aragon. So this is somebody that Pope Francis is very interested in pushing forward this cause. And we haven't seen this in recent history where we see a pope initiating a cause. So we'll be very interested to see whether the Belgian bishops pick up this impetus from Rome, or if Pope Francis himself will push this ahead. So stay tuned for that. So we're talking about King Baudouin as the potential new saint coming out of Belgium. Let's take a look at the might-be saint of the day. We do this every week where we look at somebody on the path to sainthood. We're talking about servants of God, venerables, blesseds, all those people who don't have all their miracles yet recognized by Rome. The might-be saints lines up to my television series, They Might Be Saints, which airs on Wednesdays on EWTN, and my book of the same title, They Might Be Saints. I think it's my best one. It's available from EWTNRC.com. And so for today's date, we've got my patron saint, as I like to call him, Blessed Carlo Acutis. Of course, as a young boy, he developed these different websites and other things that looked at Eucharistic miracles and Marian apparitions. And we've had his mother on this radio show, which is always a great honor. But I always pray to him when my computer's failing or for other reasons. I've got an icon of him on my desk. And that is, of course, Blessed Carlo Acutis. He was born on May 3rd, 1991, in Barking in Dagenham in London, in England, and he was a teenager from the Archdiocese of Milan, known for creating a series of websites devoted to church-related supernatural events. And as a teenage boy, he liked comics, computer programming, video editing, and other things. He was known at school for defending other kids, especially those with disabilities, from bullies. And he died on October 12, 2006 in Milan of leukemia, and he was buried in Assisi, and he was reinterred in 2019 in the Church of Santa Maria Maggiore in Italy, in Assisi. And he was beatified by Pope Francis in 2018 with a decree of heroic virtues. His beatification was celebrated in the Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi with the Cardinal Agostino Vallini as the chief celebrant. And the beatification miracle involved the healing of a child in Brazil who was healed of pancreatic disorders. And very recently, May 23, 2024, Pope Francis promulgated a decree of a miracle attributed to the intercession of Blessed Carlo. This miracle involved the healing of a Costa Rican university student from a potentially fatal head injury that she received in a bicycle accident, and her mother began praying to Blessed Carlo, asking for his intercession, and the day she arrived at Carlo's tomb in Assisi on pilgrimage, the hemorrhage disappeared and the young patient began to recover, and Pope Francis announced the consistory to decide on the canonization of Blessed Carlo. And of course, we still don't know a date for that big canonization, but you can bet that I'll be trying to go to that one. And that is Blessed Carlo Acutis, the might-be saint of the day, and we all know it's beyond him being just the might-be saint. He will be a saint, but this is the last chance we have to honor Blessed Carlo on this show. And then we talk about They Might Be Saints, the television program. You can tune in every Wednesday and this week on the 16th at 8 a.m. Central Time. They Might Be Saints, Venerable Mother Maria Kaupas. In the case for canonization for Venerable Mother Maria Kaupas, the founder of the Sisters of St. Casimir, her inspirational work in education and healthcare led many to seek her intercession before God on their behalf. And that is They Might Be Saints coming up every week. And this week is on Wednesday at 8 a.m. Central Time. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking about that question of how is Christmas celebrated in heaven? There's a brand new book from Anthony DeStefano, the author of Christmas in Heaven. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. We've got a great book that's come across my desk, and it's a fun one. It's a children's book. It's called Christmas in Heaven. And this is an interesting concept, of course. We all celebrate Christmas in a big way here on earth, but how is Christmas celebrated in heaven with all the saints and everyone's celebrating this big day? And so we're so excited today to be joined by the author of this book and numerous other children's books that have caught the attention of people all around the world, not only Catholics, but for the beautiful illustrations and the great storytelling. And that is Anthony DeStefano, who is the author of this book, Christmas in Heaven. Welcome back to the program, Anthony.
Oh, thanks so much for having me back, Michael. I appreciate it.
It's great to talk with you, and you're a prolific author. I've been excited to see so many books over the years come out, and oftentimes there's a little bit of a miraculous hook or miraculous theme, and in this book we see many beloved saints and angels making appearances in this book, Christmas in Heaven. So I always enjoy seeing what you come out with next. And so being such a prolific author, it's a challenge, of course, to come up with new material and new books. What was it that made you turn your attention to this concept of how Jesus is celebrated in heaven?
Well, you know, Michael, I'm always interested in writing books about the true meaning of Christmas. Christmas has obviously been so secularized, beyond recognition. And I've written several children's books already about the Nativity, seen from the perspective of, say, the Star of Bethlehem or a grumpy old ox or Joseph's donkey. But this time I wanted to do something different. When I was a kid, I didn't really understand why we gave each other presents at Christmas and why children received presents from our parents. And I remember asking my father when I was very young about this, and the way he explained it to me was that it was Jesus' birthday. And since we couldn't give Jesus a physical present because he was in heaven, what we should do is give each other presents because that's what made Jesus happiest. So this was an easy concept to understand. All kids understand birthdays and gift-giving at birthdays. So from an early age, I knew that Christmas wasn't just a celebration of Jesus' birth, but it was his birthday. And that's an important distinction for a kid. The way I was able to make this into a story, because everything is better as a story, especially for children, is to have a little boy who is sad because his grandmother has died. And it's Christmas time. And he's wondering, how is she celebrating Christmas in heaven? And so his grandfather, who's the husband of the woman who has died, sits the boy on his knee and tries to paint a very consoling picture of him of heaven and then the big birthday celebration that's going on there with all the angels and saints and, of course, Our Lady and Jesus and, yes, his grandmother, too. So that was the genesis of this book. And I am very proud of it because it is a different kind of Christmas book that gives the true meaning of Christmas without necessarily going over the Nativity again.
Absolutely, and I think that what one of the things that's amazing about this book is you tackle a topic that's very difficult to do in a children's book. We're talking about dealing with the grief, suffering, and pain of a child losing a loved one, like a grandmother. So,
Yeah.
talk a little bit about how you handled that angle. It's an important thing that each and every one of us has to grapple with at some point in our lives. But children who have to deal with death or have to learn about death at some point, I think this is an important thing that you folded into this book. Talk about that angle of the book.
Yes, well, yeah, this is a serious book because, as you said, it does involve death and grieving. Children, all of us have to face death, as you just said. At some point, children grieve over the death of their pets. They grieve over the death of their grandparents. They deal with many kinds of permanent loss. And if you don't deal with those sad feelings, if you just try to sweep them under the rug, then they can fester and grow into complexes and psychological problems and all kinds of phobias and depressions. Fortunately, as Christians, we believe that death doesn't have the final word. We believe that the final word is resurrection and life everlasting in heaven. So the Christian view of life and death is extraordinarily optimistic. And so because we have that view, that optimistic view, we're able to talk to our children about grieving and death in a way that allows them to grieve in a healthy way. And the way I dealt with it in this particular book, with this serious subject, is by making the book upbeat and positive. And the way I was able to accomplish that was through the playful way that we portrayed the saints. The saints and angels in this book, because this is also an introduction to the saints and angels, because they're the ones celebrating Jesus' birthday in heaven. They're all
I love that. I love that
doing-
angle. How you wrap in the saints and you have their patronages in there, and people can get to know them. Talk about some of the saints that are featured in your book.
I try to include most of the famous saints, like Saint Michael and the Archangel, and Saint Peter, and Saint Joseph, and Saint Francis, and Saint Patrick, and Saint Joan of Arc, and of course Our Lady. And I try to have them doing the things that they're famous for. And that's where the comedic element comes in a little bit, because of, we have, for instance, Saint Martha, who is constantly cleaning and cooking and doing chores, just as she did in the Gospels. And when St. Francis barrels through the door, accompanied by a whole crowd of cats and dogs and sheep and donkey, St. Martha is behind him trying to sweep up, because presumably they're making a mess. And St. Jude, who is, of course, the patron saint of miracles and hopeless causes, helps St. Martha out with a vacuum cleaner. So these are kind of lighthearted and playful depictions of the saints, and they're meant to bring a smile to the face of children and help them deal with the more serious aspects of the book in a hopeful way.
Absolutely, and I love that the book includes a 2-page glossary with descriptions of each saint. So for those people who want to know more or talk more to their children about those saints, you've got that resource right there in the book. We're talking today with Anthony DeStefano, the author of Christmas in Heaven from Sophia Institute Press. This is it's never too early to think about Christmas, and this is a great book that does that for children. And what is your hope, Anthony, for people who pick up this book? I think people are now familiar with your great catalog of books, and people see your name on a book and they get excited to see what's coming out next. What's your hope for this specific book that people pick up?
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. In terms of what I want people to get out of this book, well, I'd say 3 things. First of all, the true meaning of Christmas, which is that it is the celebration of Jesus' birth. It's not about Santa. It's not about trees and music and all that, as nice as those things are. It's about Jesus' birthday. Second, the fact that heaven is joyful. It's a wonderful place. Nothing for children to be frightened about. And third, I want children to at least get a glimpse of the world of the saints, which is really a glimpse of this beautiful doctrine we have in the church of the communion of saints, which says that there's a lot more to life than just what we see around us, that there's an invisible spiritual world that's just as important, and that the saints in heaven are real, and that they're alive, that they can help us, and that hopefully one day we'll be among them. Christmas is a magical holiday, but it's also a very sad time of year for many people who have lost loved ones. I'd like to impress upon children from a very early age that even if people have died, Christmas should be a joyful time, because those loved ones hopefully are in heaven, and we will be able to see them again. That's the main thing I want people to get out of this book.
Beautiful. We've been talking today with Anthony DeStefano about this book, Christmas in Heaven. And for people who want to find out more about you, Anthony, or how to get this book, what's the best place that they can go?
Well, I have a web page, if people don't mind my long Italian name. It's www.anthonydestefano.com, but they can go to the Sophia Institute Press website. EWTN has all my books, and of course I always like to encourage people to go to the local Catholic and Christian bookstores to patronize them.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Anthony, for telling us about your new book, and best wishes in the Christmas season ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
God bless. That was Anthony DeStefano, author of this new book, Christmas in Heaven, coming out to us from Sophia Institute Press. Check that one out. You can go to sophiainstitute.com for more information on this book and to pick that one up. That's all the time we have for today's show. If you missed any of this episode or want to catch up on past episodes, you can go to EWTN.com/radio, check out the audio archives, or download the free EWTN app. I'd like to thank our guest today, Anthony DeStefano, and his new book, Christmas in Heaven, and also Father Robert Spitzer for talking to us on today's show. Check out my series, Explore with the Miracle Hunter. There's a new episode coming out on the 19th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Walsingham. I explore the miraculous apparition of Our Lady of Walsingham, who revealed plans for the Holy Family's house in Nazareth to a Catholic English noblewoman. Check that one out on the 19th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a brand new episode. I'd like to thank you for joining me today on Miracle Hunter, where from claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt. Talk to you next week.